The Wealthy Life is brought to you by investment dealer Raymond James. Life well planned. See what a Raymond James advisor can do for you.
Want to know the secret to happiness? Give your money away. Not all of it, though. With us today is Janine Davies, Executive Director of a national charitable foundation. Janine, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me your story. How did you get interested in the charitable sector?
Well, I volunteered as a child with family and did the usual thing, but I think in my career, I was in my late 20s, I was invited to join a board, and it was a board related to HIV and AIDS, and they invited me, and I always felt like I had to pay it forward. I had so many people that I was connected to that had passed or had contracted the disease, and they didn't have a banker on the board, and I should say I'm a recovering banker, and at this time they invited me to join, and I ended up being really comfortable in the corporate environment, and I was asked to head up the corporate fundraising strategy, and that's when I learned the alignment between charitable giving and business.
Wow, having a personal story like that when so many people around you are affected makes it easier to ask for money, doesn't it?
Yeah, I always used to say we funded from kids to convicts, so I could always find a story or a connection for the corporation I was working with to sponsor an event.
And what keeps you motivated going forward? You've worked in the charitable sector a long time now. What fulfills you going forward?
Well, I've always felt that I was a bit Robin Hood-esque, and that I took from the rich to give to the poor.
I like that.
Yeah. And now my job at work, at least on the day job, is to inspire other people to do that and be a real catalyst for change and create opportunities for them to connect with charity. So it doesn't have to be a big organization that you work with. 54% of all charities in Canada are operated by volunteers.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a lot of work, and so that's a lot of sweat equity, I call it, out there in the marketplace.
And it's important.
Yeah, so every one of those little donations, whether it's $300 or $1,000, those smaller donations really make a big difference on those smaller charities.
Or it could even be $1 or $2 when you're going through your checkout counter buying your groceries.
Which is very common now.
And that adds up to be a significant number.
Yes.
So how should people start giving? When should they start giving, and how?
Well, the best way to start is actually to find something that's important to you. So is it your children's school? Are you a volunteer on the PAC? Are you connected with the environment, and do you do the shoreline cleanup every year? Or maybe it's cancer because you've lost a family member to a cancer-related cause. Understanding what's important to you first is always the first step in going forward. And then what we ask people to do is actually reach out to those charities if they're not already volunteering. Now remember, I said 54% of charities are run by volunteers.
Yes.
So chances are you're already connected. It could be your brother, your cousin, or your uncle that you're already working or that's volunteering at those charities.
And that's generally how it starts. I remember my dad coming home and sharing a story with me. He was volunteering and fundraising for the Y. And he told me the story of this boy who was at a fork in the road. He had a tough upbringing, and he was going to go down that same negative path, but he got connected with the Y, free swim lessons, was surrounded by a bunch of kids who were all talking about going to university and what they wanted to be when they grew up.
Yep.
And he went down that path instead. And so that story struck a chord with me. I immediately cut him a check and said, I want to support that. I'll pay for someone's swim lessons. And then it just grew and blossomed from there.
Yeah, and having that personal connection. And it's amazing how somebody else's story can inspire you. I get the opportunity to learn from people every day, and I think that finding that story is really important, but also understanding the impact that you can have. Because sometimes organizations need a volunteer. They don't necessarily need the money. And understanding the difference between the two, you can become a donor, but whether you give $5 or $500, it's understanding where that money is going.
That's important. And you talked about it earlier about volunteering versus giving money.
Yes.
I think there's a third thing people give. They can give their time, they can give their money, and they can give their knowledge.
Yes.
And it sounds like you've done all of them, but your work on the board and other people can get involved in the board to give their knowledge to help that organization grow.
Yes, and I think oftentimes people write checks or they volunteer, but when you give at a board level, you see so many different things going on. Professionally, you can expand your career, and I wouldn't be in the job I am today if I hadn't stepped up and done that board role.
Now, what tends to trigger some of the bigger donations, and what do people do with that? I wanted you to expand a little bit on something called the Charitable Giving Fund, which I have.
Yes, so big donations usually come from a life event. So whether it's the sale of a business, you've had a stock or a bond that's appreciated so far that you don't know what to do with the profit. It's a great problem to have.
Yes.
Lifetime events, you're getting married or there's been, unfortunately, a death in the family. Oftentimes we can take advantage of those situations and create strategic giving. So you can give in a timely fashion to a charitable giving fund, which is really just a way station or a bucket that you put your money in and you choose when you want to give the money out. Now there's lots of different organizations on the marketplace that do them from $5,000 all the way up to the $250,000 minimum. There's a whole gamut for people to choose from. So I think that doing a little bit of research on which options are available to them can make it more beneficial.
And essentially, it's like a mini foundation.
Yes.
And I know the reason I started it for myself is I wanted to be intentional with my giving. So I take 10% of my net income every year and I put it in there. I get the tax benefits, which is nice, but more important than that, I get to make a difference and impact, and I get to direct that money when I'm ready to those causes that I believe in and support.
Yeah, so instead of being reactive to all those opportunities that come across your desk, now you can be very intentional, and I think that you get more value yourself because now you can show up in a meaningful way and give sometimes a larger gift.
How do people decide who to give to? There's so many charities out there. How many?
Over 175,000 in Canada. Of those, only about 80,000 are qualified donees. So those are the ones that you give money to and you get a tax receipt. But there's a lot of great nonprofits that you can work with and donate money to. You just wouldn't get a tax receipt for those. But when you're considering what you want to give or when you want to give it, I think it's really important that you understand who the charity is and where the money's going. Yes. Oftentimes, a lot of our donors now are entrepreneurs or small business owners, and they're giving a portion of the profit like yourself, and they really don't know how to delineate, do I give to Canadian Cancer Society or do I give to Street Legal Society? And those are very different. CRA has some resources available, but also charityintelligence.com, philanthropicfoundationsofcanada.com.
So people should do a little bit of research. And for those of you who want some help deciding who to give to, contact us at thewealthylife.com for a copy of our personal giving workbook. Janine, thank you very much for being on the show today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been really great talking to you about how to give money away.
It's an important topic.
That's right.
And when we return, discover if it's better to rent or own your own home into retirement.